panel today consists of a wonderful speaker from the American Feed Industry Association, and she will be with us hopefully shortly. We're going to hear a little bit from Emily Stearns, who's the American Horse Council's Health, Welfare, and Regulatory Affairs Liaison. And then we are going to also hear from Ashley Harkins, who is our director for the United Horse Coalition. So here's my little introduction to get the topic sort of teed up. Our subject today is hay shortages, prices, and spoilage, and how they're putting a strain on owners' wallets. And I did a little due diligence and some research to sort of set the stage. So here goes. Fertilizer and prices and drought last year decimated hay production in the United States, and the country has seen its biggest decline in 11 years, with stock at their lowest level since that data began being collected, according to the National Agricultural Statistics Service. The recent December 1st hay stocks report from USDA showed total stocks were 71.9 million tons, which is 16.4% below the previous 10-year average and the lowest December stocks report since 1954. The February 14th report that I pulled recently from the U.S. Drought Monitor said that abnormal dry conditions continue to remain at 13% were moderate, 14% were considered severe, extreme drought remained at 19%, and exceptional drought remained near 37%. So climate change, whether we want to believe it or not, there's something going on out there that's driving some of these weather conditions. A little research also said, and I don't know if you would agree or not, that the typical cost of a bale of hay changes a lot within any given year. But according to the Internet Hay Exchange, the current price for a bale of hay is around $109, and alfalfa hay costs around $143. Now, both of those prices are per ton and does depend upon location and shape and size of bales and all the things that go along with that. You know, it's really amazing to me that we are seeing of course, drought causing some of these fluctuations, especially in states like Arizona and California and Colorado, to name just a few. But the high demand for grass and alfalfa hay in China, Japan, and the UAE, where bales and tons of hay are used to feed their domesticated livestock, has also got a big impact on pricing here in the U.S. The cost of fuel greatly affects hay growers because they're trying to figure out how they're going to get hay delivered and the things that go along with that. So there's just a lot of factors that come into play right now. And we hear every day of the American Horse Council from horse owners out there, and I see some friends from the Coalition of State Horse Councils. I know they probably get these calls too, saying, wow, I'm just having a really difficult time finding hay, period, or finding hay I can afford. So that's the reason we're going to have a conversation about that. And I see our first speaker is with us. So hello, it's nice to see you. We have a wonderful guest from the American Feed Institute Association. She's the Director of Regulatory Affairs. That means that she's providing leadership on regulatory and state issues related to pet food, equine nutrition, and general regulatory issues. She works closely with the Association of the American Feed Control Officials, and she was previously a government relations director for the Northeast Agribusiness and Feed Alliance. She worked for Vermont's Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, and she was also a regional dairy specialist with the University of Vermont's Extension System. She has a degree in dairy science from Virginia Polytech and animal science from the University of Vermont. But the most important thing that I love about her is not only does she have this vast knowledge and expertise, but in her free time, she competes in combined driving events. So she's one of us. She's a horse person herself, and she is feeling and hearing probably some of the same pinch points that we're hearing out there. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today. Let me hand the baton to you.
such a treat to be here amongst friends. So my presentation today is going to be very basic because I'm going to serve as a launch point for people to do their own research and move ahead. So my guess is that for all today, this is going to be pretty darn straightforward, but realize that if you are reaching out and working with horse owners, that this is giving them the baseline from which to customize for their situation. So again, this is going to be a basic overview, and it's going to be for horse owners to then step on and get the information they need on each of these topics. And frankly, we could start and finish with this screen right here. Maximize the use of quality forage, and that's the basis of it. And it really doesn't matter whether we're talking big rounds, big squares, or small squares. It's maximizing the use of that forage. That's what our horses are designed to eat, per pound of protein, per pound of energy. And remember, that's what the horses care about, is those pounds of protein, those pounds of energy. That's always going to be our best bet. Recognizing individual horses, individual situations are certainly going to call for other feed ingredients. And remember, I do work for the Animal Feed Institute. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of my own organization, the Animal Feed Industry Association. And our members manufacture all types of animal feeds, animal supplements. They grow and process forages. So we cover all aspects, but I am going to focus, as do my members, on the importance of quality forage. This is the same mare, off-track thoroughbred, the photo on the left. She's 5 years old, a year off the track. You can see the ribs on this horse. She was being fed the lowest quality forage I have ever seen. And I had it tested, and I couldn't believe the numbers, just how poor the quality was. And it wasn't poor on just quality for numbers on the paper, for pounds of protein, pounds of energy. This forage was moldy, so it was full of dust. It was being fed in a big round bale feeder that wasn't covered, only 2 horses in the pasture. So not only was it moldy to begin with, but it was fermenting and rotting. I've never seen forages this bad. So you can imagine a 5-year-old chestnut thoroughbred mare, the pounds of grain that she was going through to try to maintain any body condition on this mare, and the ulcers that came along with that. On the right, same mare, a couple years later. Yes, she's been treated for ulcers, and that's huge, but she's also been put on quality forages, and the amount of concentrate feed, the amount of commercial grain that she's being fed has dropped to just about nothing in the picture on the right. So how do we go about that? How do we go about maximizing our forage quality? Well, the first piece, if you're looking at dollars and being efficient on the use of dollars, is only buy what you can store to maintain and feed efficiently. On the left, you know, a beautiful, clean hay mow, airy and bright, and yet protected from the elements. And on the left, on the right, a lot simpler photo. This is just a few bales that you're going to be able to store at a time. But the important piece here, they're up on a pallet. They're up off the ground, a little concerned in the back right hand of the corner where we've got some daylight coming through. But in general, this feed looks like it's going to be stored away from the elements and off the ground. There's no sense in buying multiple tons of feed that's going to take you a long time to feed out, and it just ends up getting damp and dusty and can't be stored appropriately. As far as feeding efficiently, lots of ideas on how to go about that, and I'll touch on a few of those later on. This time of year, the sins of our winter start to resurface. And this is what happens, is that snow starts to melt away in the parts of the country where we have snow. And we see that every day we've wasted just a little bit of forage, a little bit of forage, a little bit of forage. But over the course of an entire winter and multiple horses, that little bit of forage really starts to add up into what's been wasted. These are just a couple ideas that I found. Anybody can find comparable ideas with a quick Google search. I really like the one on the left. That's just a heavy duty garbage can, and it's been wired to a fence, and it's had a hole cut on the bottom of it. This same garbage can, by the way, I found for sale, same brand name, anywhere from $145 to $200 for the exact same garbage can. I even took the time to look at the details. So yes, some upfront cost for protecting your forages from the elements and from waste, but certainly worth the effort. And on the right, just again, another homemade example of forage being kept up off the ground, protected from the elements. And of course, there's many, many commercial versions of these that are available. But day after day, horse after horse, just wasting some of that forage really starts to add up. Know how to read a forage analysis. I'm going to spend some time on this slide. There is nothing more comfortable with forage analysis. And at first look, it's really scary. We've got percentages, we've got pounds, we've got mega cows, we've got all these things that might not roll off of all of our tongues equally easily, but I'm going to spend just a few minutes on this slide because this is the most important part of feeding quality forage, is know what you're feeding. What we have here are 3 different forages labeled A, B, and C. And down the left-hand side, we've got a couple basic nutrients that we should be concerned about. First of all, dry matter. Has this forage been put up dry enough? Anything under 86%, you're looking at concerns of that feed becoming dusty and moldy while it's in storage. Lots of times for those horse diets, we're looking at something that's 88% or higher, if possible, for dry matter. Just how dry is that bale of hay? Crude protein. Horses have a requirement of about 12% crude protein day in, day out. Of course, individual horses vary on that. But if we look across our 3 forages here, we range from a high of 16% in forage A down to less than 5% in B, and then C coming in at about 11%, about where a horse needs to land, close enough to our 12%. So we're about in the ballpark with our forage C. Acid detergent fiber, we call this ADF. It's an indication of how mature is that feed when it's been harvested. How much fiber is there in the feed? Well, no surprise, when you look at forage B, the higher the fiber, the harder it is for the horse to digest it. And frankly, the less willing the horse may be to even eat it. And you look at that forage B at 52% ADF or acid detergent fiber, horses are not going to be real willing to eat this feed. 37% ADF on either forage A or forage C, right in the ballpark of something a horse is going to be willing and able to eat and digest. Then we drop down to the line that gets tricky. So I'm only going to focus on the net energy for maintenance. I'm not going to focus on the energy for gain. The reason that gets tricky here is, first of all, we're just not used to this in our common everyday lingo of net energy and mega cows and that sort of thing. That's the first reason. The second is, depending on the part of the country you're in and how your forage analysis lab may be used to running analyses, you're going to see all kinds of measurements here. You might see digestible energy. You might see net energy for lactation. If you're in a heavy dairy part of the country. My favorite is the old, out-of-date total digestible nutrients, but boy, it sure was easy to understand. So my point is here, you're going to have to spend a little bit of time understanding net energy of maintenance and what it means. Here's the easy thing. A 1,000-pound horse is going to need about 14 mega cows per day of net energy. That same 1,000-pound horse is going to eat about 20 pounds of forage, about 2% of its body weight. And since our forage is pretty much dry, you can say about 20 pounds of total feed. Forage, concentrate, everything, about 20 pounds. Yeah, they're willing to eat a whole lot more than that, but about 20 pounds is going to meet their requirements for the digestive tract. So if I do some simple math, and let's just look at I'm going to go back over to my friend C, because I like that forage, at 0.58 megacows per pound, and my horse is going to eat about 20 pounds a day, that horse is going to get about 11.5 megacows of energy. That horse has a requirement of about 20 megacows of energy. So we're a little bit short on energy, a little bit short on protein. Now you know what you're a little bit short of, and you've got an idea of how to supplement it with a commercial grain. If you look at our buddy there in the middle, forage B, that horse is going to be short on energy, and it's going to end up looking like that thoroughbred mare. Even though, in that poor mare's case, they were throwing a lot of grain at her and causing gastric problems, she just was not able to put the weight on. Plus, she was going to have a hard time eating 20 pounds of feed a day because that hay was such horrible quality. So be comfortable with a forage analysis. If you're not comfortable with it, there are some amazing extension brochures out there. Just get one for whatever part of the country you're from, because it will use examples for where you happen to be. And if you still are a little lost on it, then ask your nutritionist, ask your veterinarian should be able to read this. And if you're lucky enough to have a neighbor that's comfortable with, well, then fix them a nice supper and a nice bottle of wine, and they'll go through it with you. But really be comfortable with a forage analysis. And yeah, there's a whole lot more information. You guys are like, well, Louise, you're not talking about sugars and you're not talking about carbohydrates. And I know all of that's on there. And I know all of that's really important to our horses. But for the purpose of today's conversation, I'm starting really basic and saying you've got to be comfortable with at least these baseline parts of a forage analysis. Next, know how much of that hay and feed your horse is eating in a day. If it was that feed B from our previous slide, we may have been offering that 1,000-pound horse 20 pounds of that feed a day, but I doubt that horse is able to eat it. So on the left here, this is a scale. You can buy these anywhere from $12 to $22 for a simple scale. Put a garbage can on the bottom of it, fill it up with their hay. You know how much hay you're feeding in a day. Then you can figure out how much your horses are actually eating of that hay. You can use a hay net on the bottom of the scale, whatever you want, weigh the feed. You know, my current method right now is to fill a sled full of hay and slide that out to the horses. And the other day, a friend of mine was like, well, how do you know how much to put in that? I'm like, because I've been doing it for 40 years. So you get comfortable with it, but especially if you've got someone else that has to feed your horses on occasion, and they don't know what 20 pounds of hay looks like, the scale is your friend. Now, the other person who can really be your friend is your local postal clerk. And I'm lucky in Craftsbury, Vermont, our postal clerk is Dave, and we love Dave. And when the cost of my grain went up to $36 for 50 pounds of grain, you can bet that I was going down to Dave with my coffee can and my grain and saying, Dave, I need to know exactly what 3/4 of a pound of this very expensive diet supplement looks like, because I'm not going to feed a pound if all I need is 3/4 of a pound. And Dave's a good sport. You know, when the baby chicks come in the spring, he's good about calling us to go pick them up. But I walked in and Dave used his postal scale and weighed out my grain for me. So make good friends with your postal clerk and have those supplements and those other feeds. Get them weighed so that you know you're feeding what your animal needs. Cubed and pelleted forages. In a year like this, where just finding the forages is tricky, these really do serve a place. So they serve a place as bringing in extra forages if you just need the pounds. They are consistent, they're always the same, they're easy to feed, the horses like them. They're very helpful for balancing diets. If you have horses with lots of differing needs and you can have a baseline forage and then bring in the cubed or pelleted forages to mix in with that, they're certainly helpful for addressing health issues with horses, with gastric issues going on. Just be aware of what the price point is. You heard Julie talk about forages at $100 a ton. I'm certainly seeing them advertised some places for $300 to $400 a ton, and that's before you get them moved to where you need them. Just and pelleted forages at $16 for a 40-pound bag, you're looking at about $800 a ton for those forages. So just be aware of what your trade-off is on that. Know where they fit into your diet, but also consider the cost of these versus the cost, if you can find it, the appropriate forages in a baled form of some sort. So review the diet, review what the supplements are that you have, that you're feeding your horse. And that's a good thing every couple of months to sit down with whatever company you're buying your supplements from and say, hey, this is how I'm using the horse now. This is what the horse is getting for forages and other feed types now. What are my supplement needs? Because those supplement costs can certainly add up. And I know that we have many different reasons for feeding those supplements. Just be aware that you've really thought about your reasons for feeding them and how they're fitting into your current diet. And then be comfortable with a body condition score. And this time of year, those horses sure like to trick us. In my part of the world, I've got a pretty fluffy coat out there. And I will admit that I upped the calorie content on my little guy, because putting my hand on him, there were a few ribs poking through under all that fluffy fur. And if you're not comfortable on a day-to-day basis looking at body condition score, that same friend that you help them out on reading the forage analysis, invite them over for a meal to take a look and put a hand on your horses. Another set of eyes always works well on that. Now, my favorite old horsey aunt used to drive by her paddock from morning to night and say, "Do you think Stormy's lost weight since this morning?" Probably aren't going to see your changes quite that quick, unless you're my aunt, and I think her eye may have been that good. But just be aware, over time, those body condition changes can creep up on you, either going towards our quarter horse friend over here on the left, or slightly ribbier bay on. We certainly suffer from grouping challenges Louise, I only have so many hours in the day and I only have one paddock and I'm feeding both of these critters. And that's where you really do need to be clever in what you are doing, in having a baseline forage and then supplementing as needed, so that the little fellow on the left doesn't end up looking like the big guy on the right unintentionally. You may need to be creative with some fencing, some use of muzzles, that sort of thing. But certainly understand with horses, we start throwing in all of the social issues, that you want to use different horses different times of the day. Getting them in and out of paddocks is a challenge. And I certainly understand all of the grouping challenges with horses. There are some clever ideas out there of how to get around those. And yes, management is time, but time is money. And if by looking at some of your grouping, you're able to save money and only feed horses what they need, then it will pay off in the end. But I believe me, I know how challenging this is. And finally, the last point is really consider climate, age, workload, and health on the individual horses. That one standing there on the left, if it's above 40 degrees and that rain's pounding down straight without a wind behind it, that horse probably isn't using a whole lot of extra energy to stay warm. The temperature drops below 40 degrees and the wind kicks up and starts driving that rain, is going to need some extra energy to stay warm. That little critter on the right is my little guy, and on that day it was -4. The night before it had been -55, and he looks pretty darn happy standing out there in that sun. The wind had died down and he was soaking up all those rays of sun, and life was good. But the warmest it got that day was -4. But I had prepped a couple days earlier, a few extra calories coming into him for a couple of days. On the 2 days, luckily it only lasted for 2 days this year. I'm certain some of you live in parts of the country like mine where we can have that kind of weather for a week or more. But I had prepped it, a couple days before, starting to get some extra calories in. Yeah, there was an extra feeding that went out during the day. And with that feeding, there was warm water that came out at that same time, just to make certain that the digestive tract was working and he was willing to keep pushing that forage down his throat. Really realizing the importance of forage with that. So just assess that on occasion. What's going on climatically, what's going on with age, workload, and overall health of the animal. So I realized this was very basic, and it really serves as a launching point for individual horse owners to consider all of these things in more detail. And I don't know about you, but boy, I've loved Thelwell ever since I was a little girl. And this particular one rings through. You've got the little girl, the huge pile of hay over her head, her little rat terrier, and her little pony. And she says, he can manage on tin food. Why can't you? So that wraps up what I had in the way of presentation. I'm happy to take questions now or wherever it works best for the rest of the day.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, I hope you guys will put your questions in the chat and we're going to circle back to them in just a minute. I would like Emily Stearns, since we were talking about cubes and about challenges with feed, Emily, if you would say a few words about one of the recent issues that was reported regarding some challenges with I'm going to call it spoilage or contaminated cubes.
So one thing we've been tracking over here since December and talking about cubes and forages, this has been something we've been keeping kind of a close eye on. Back in December, we had a botulism scare tied to alfalfa cubes, one specific brand of alfalfa cubes. So you can see it on my screen, hopefully. The Manzanola Feeds, top of the Rockies, alfalfa cubes. There has been now an official FDA recall. So what happened was back in December, there was a kind of burst of about 20 or 30 horses in Louisiana that were showing neurological symptoms. Many of them ended up having to be euthanized. And the common denominator was they were all fed these hay cubes. And the hay cubes officially went out for testing. And in that time, it turns out upwards and likely over at this point. There are probably unreported cases. Over 100 horses have fallen ill who were fed these hay cubes since December 2022, and at least 50% have had to be euthanized or have died as a result. The cases have all been identified in Colorado, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Texas. And as of January 19th, the official test results came back that the hay cubes did test positive for botulism. So these horses are all falling ill with botulism directly related to these hay cubes. And what they believed happened was some sort of animal, likely a deer, had either died in the field or somehow been caught up in the baling of the hay cubes. And then botulism, created an environment where botulism kind of thrived, and then the hay cubes were fed out. So per the FDA recall, if any of these hay cubes are found in your barn or you see them at your local feed store, the date codes are listed at the bottom of the slide. So for essentially anything produced in November of 2022 and sold in Arkansas, Colorado, Illinois, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, or Wisconsin, to just throw them away. And if you do need to handle them, mask, gloves, don't feed them out. You need to sterilize any feed bins that the hay cubes were living in. But most notably at this time, I think my biggest concern would be if people are looking to get a deal on hay cubes, if you see them being given away on Facebook, on Craigslist, something like that, to make sure you're checking the date codes. Anything after those date codes should be safe. Anything before the date codes should be safe, but it's those November 2022 date codes from, I believe it's November 12th through November 16th, should be considered contaminated and thrown away. And if there are still hay cubes being fed out, they are still at risk for causing botulism. So it's not a, just wait it out and the feed will eventually become safe. If you have them in your barn, you need to be throwing them away. We did release a press release about this. So there is a direct link to the FDA website. If you just look up in your favorite web search, FDA recall alfalfa cubes, it will come up and lead you directly to the FDA website as well. And then we're also happy to answer any questions about this as well.
Great. Thanks, Emily. I really appreciate that. So I think the moral to the story here is not all things are created equal, and you need to be really smart and very mindful of different strategies you can use that were talked about in the first presentation, and also stay informed about other kinds of issues that can come along. So now we're going to turn our attention to the United Horse Coalition. The United Horse Coalition is a program of the American Horse Council Foundation, and their purpose and mission is to help horse owners who are in need or horses that are at risk. And so there are some avenues there. If you find yourself or you have a friend who, for whatever reason, is struggling financially or whatever the circumstances are, and they need some help, we really want to make certain that they have an outlet for that. So Ashley Harkins is our director for the United Horse Coalition, and she's going to talk about the equine resource database, because this is like the best kept secret in the industry. If you need help, you can go and find it there. So Ashley.
Yeah, so secret is the key point. We're trying to make it not so much. So Louise gave you some great tips on how to maximize the use of forages and feed. And what I want to do is sort of supplement that excellent advice and let you know that if that's not enough to get you by and you find you've fallen on hard times, or for whatever reason, maybe you lost your job or you're struggling financially, or maybe you're going through a health crisis, or this could be somebody that you know. we want to make sure that people are aware of this database. So no one is in this industry is immune to hardship. And that's why we want to let you know that there are resources out there that can help. So as Julie mentioned, our overall goal at UHC has always been to make sure that we're helping the industry to work collaboratively to address the issues that are surrounding horses that are at risk or in transition. And part of that solution is really to help owners who find themselves in a situation where their horse might become at risk and help provide them with resources to hopefully keep their horse safe at home. Or if that's not an option, work with them to help them responsibly rehome their horse. Julie also mentioned one of the most important resources that we offer these types of horse owners who might need help is the UHC Equine Resource Database. This is a free online database tool that includes assistance, support, and safety net programs like hay and feed assistance, castration assistance, vet assistance, and really any other vital programs that we've identified nationwide that are available out there to help assist at-risk horses, their owners, and also the many nonprofits who provide these types of resources. Included in this database, we also have a listing of over 900 rescues and sanctuaries that are operating nationwide, and we are continuously auditing those to add and remove them in lifetime. We want to get the word out, obviously, and encourage any horse owner who might need access to one of these resources or assistance programs to go to our website, familiarize yourself with what resources exist locally to you that might be able to lend a hand. And there's also a lot of great educational materials as well on our site, and those are all free to the general public. I always let people know if you're having trouble navigating the site, or if you can't find a resource on the website or through the database, you're always encouraged to reach out to me. My email address is uhc@horsecouncil.org, and I'd be happy to point you in the right direction. A lot of what we do at UHC is networking, collaborating within the equine industry. And there's a lot more help that exists out there now than in previous years. So we just want to make sure that owners are aware that these resources exist and help spread the word.
Thanks, Ashley.
I'd be happy to show the website, but I'm afraid that my technology is going to not work. Things have been going.
Well, I was just going to add to what you said that I think it's so great to use the tool. You can go, you can enter a zip code. It's going to tell you where you can find a hay bank. We're very fortunate to partner with Home for Every Horse and Purina to offer feed coupons and all kinds of different resources that are out there. And so if you find yourself in some circumstance, maybe you can't even find hay in your area and you need help, there's a great opportunity for you to go out there to the United Horse Coalition and see what's around and how you can get access to it and make it work for you. So thanks, Ashley.
Sure.
We have heard from our three presenters for today, so I want to pause and ask if there are questions out there. Anybody help me look and see if you see something in the chat, let me know. We have a great relationship with the American Feed Industry Association, and we really appreciate her participation today. It's a really great initiative for us to stay plugged into things that are going on in other areas with feed. And so sometimes we get tipped off on some conversation that's going on in another aspect of the entire supply chain, if you will, that sometimes kind of trickles over and affects the rest of us. So it's a great partnership that we have with them. Anybody else got, Emily, Ashley, or our guests, do you have questions or comments you want to share with the crowd?
I can put Ashley's website up, and then if it quits, you and her can hold on tight.
Yeah, there it is. So there's the website.
I have it on my desktop and I was afraid to share my screen. Thanks. Yeah, over in the top left corner, there's the Equine Resource Database. And what owners would do is click on that, and whatever state they reside in, they'll click on their state. And then they can select whatever type of resource that they're looking for. So we also, if for example, they're looking for a rescue or sanctuary, they can search by that rescue's particular type of affiliation. So if they have any sort of accreditation, they can search that way. Or if they're looking in particular for a type of service, for example, the big one we have right now is feed assistance. They'll click on that, their state, and then search, and we will populate the results with any of those type of services that we're aware of in their area. And like I said, we are constantly auditing this, so the resources are always changing, adding new ones, removing ones as they drop, and adding new ones as they become available. So always a work in progress.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And if you weren't aware, there are over, I think, 900 501c3 rescues and sanctuaries across the country that we correspond with as it relates to our equine welfare project and with the United Horse Coalition. We were really nervous during the pandemic that we were going to see some decline in those, and there may have been a little slippage. My guess is, Emily, as some of the facilities had challenges during the pandemic, especially as it related to fundraising and keeping themselves afloat.
The good news is we've been noticing so Ashley and I audit our database every year, and we are very concerned with the number of organizations that were ending up on the IRS auto revocation list. The main issue right now, if anyone's looking to verify a 501c3 status, is that the IRS has a backlog of over 500,000 tax forms from the last several years, thanks to COVID and staffing issues. So 700 out of 900 of our organizations in the list were on the auto revocation list. And as we're going back and sifting through those, it's looking like the IRS is catching up and that those organizations are not actually being revoked. It's all a paperwork issue, and it is starting to kind of self-resolve as things get processed.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. One other kind of a side note, we were anxious going into the pandemic if we were going to see a lot more intakes at rescues and sanctuaries, and we were really pleased that coming out of the pandemic, we actually saw adoption rates go up. So that was kind of the good news. Emily's been following some of the numbers that are there. You can read the 5th report, which was recently released from the Equine Welfare Data Collective out here somewhere on the website.
I'm getting it now.
There you go. And you can read all about what kind of capacity we have in rescues and sanctuaries and what are some of the things that are going on out there, and some trends we're seeing, some things that we've been making a note of.
And we are looking to do, and by we, I have passed the torch of the EWDC torch on, but the Equine Welfare Data Collective, Ashley and the UHC and the new staff at the EWDC will be doing some breakout reports this summer to be tracking trends from when the EWDC started collecting data back in 2018 to what it's looking like now, and tracking a lot of how those numbers have been trending.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, we're still open. We've got a few more minutes for questions, so feel free to pop those in the chat if you have them. Meanwhile, I'm going to do one small little plug. I started at the beginning of the session. We do a webinar at least once a quarter. Our next webinar will be April the 17th. It's on sports betting and fantasy gaming and what are the implications for the equestrian and equine industry. And also, I want to flag for you, we are kicking off our National Economic Impact Study. We are designing the surveys right now, and those will go out the first part of April. Doing the economic impact study is the most important thing that I could ask our equestrian community to do, because this helps us to articulate our message about how broad and how deep our industry is. It helps us understand what we're contributing each year to the national economy, and really makes a difference in how we get funding for some projects at USDA and other things that go along those lines. So please, encourage all of your friends and family who have horses to complete the survey when it comes out. It'll be sent out with a link through social media and through news outlets and a number of other ways. So look for the survey before too long. 1st of April is when we're looking to release that. So I'll pause there and just give you an opportunity to kind of digest all that and ask if you have any further questions we can address. We're always interested in topics for future webinars. And I did want to say we were going to do a little special version of our webinar probably sometime in the month of April or May, because we have some new things coming out with the economic impact study, and we want to talk a little bit about that then. So I see Lee has her hand up. So Lee, floor is yours. Unmute yourself.
So are we getting closer to the goal for the New York State breakout study?
So great question. So right now we're going to do a national economic impact study. I've got Texas, Florida, Maryland, and North Carolina have signed up to do state breakouts. New York has been diligently working to rally folks to help them support that one. And the last I heard this morning, Lee, was they're a little shy of their goal for the state breakout. I think maybe about $5,000 shy, but they've got a couple of people who are very interested in supporting it. So I hope it's going to happen. I think they're pretty close.
Hi, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
Hi, Julie and Lee. This is Corinne. Tim's on, and of course, I was listening. So yes, we are a little under 5,000 yet to go. We've got 9 days to get there, and I see a couple of my New York friends on here. So anything you can do to help spread the word, we do hope we make it.
Yep, we're really excited about that. And our press release just went out about the study. So I'm fielding phone calls left and right these days from other states who just now realize, oh my gosh, we need to get on the ball here. So we'll see if a couple more states come on and decide to do a breakout report or not. Great. Well, thank you for joining us. The recording, we'll do a little editing and clean it up a little bit, but it should be up in the next day or two on our website. So you can go to www.horsecouncil.org, go under resources, look for the listing for webinars, and you'll find our webinar videos out there that you can replay, and feel free to share them as you need to.
And Julie, Amy Hemp just had a question in the chat. So is there a hard number available for how much the price of hay has increased? Louise, you might know better than we do where those numbers are.
Yeah, I don't have any idea for a hard number, and the values that I found as I was prepping for today were all FOB prices, freight on board. So what is it going to cost you at a location? So that doesn't mean what it's going to cost you in your barn.
And Amy, what you might be able to find is USDA does weekly hay price reports. But you might have to do some work on digging back for, weeks back in 2017 or something like that. But the USDA does track that.
Yeah, I just looked at the report from February the 14th, and they've got it broken down by state. So that might be a good way to look for it. So it becomes more, local to you, so you can see what the prices look like.
Yeah, but on top of that, the cost of transportation to you is also escalating.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm actually, so I'm not just a horse owner and I live in Colorado, but I'm also doing an article on this for Horse Illustrated on the price of hay. So I'll probably be reaching out to people. But
I can put my email in the chat for you.
Thank
Amy.
you.
Feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had a quote from the livestock marketing director that's just it's not too dated, not that long ago. She said alfalfa was well over 200 a ton, and that they were seeing other hay bouncing from 140 to 150 a ton versus the numbers that I had from just last week, where they were quoting something from the Internet Hay Exchange that was saying it was running about 109 to 143. So
I'm in New England, Amy, and I'm paying for my small square bales, which are made up the street. So I'm driving 20 minutes myself to go get them, and I'm paying about $300 a ton.
Yeah,
for first cut.
how much were you paying maybe a year ago? Do you know?
I was paying $5.50 a bale 2 years ago. So now I'm paying $8 a bale.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's cheap. That's pretty cheap for New England right now. I'm looking at stuff online from other feed stores, and people are paying $11 to $12 for a 50-pound bale. Yeah.
So more than, okay.
Yeah.
So without transportation costs, even more than 100.
Correct. And in California for small squares, I think a lot of horse people are feeding small squares. So in California for small squares, we've heard reports from rescue organizations working with the United Horse Coalition that they're paying $30 for a small square bale.
And remember, you know, Louise, the numbers person, is that a 35-pound first cut not wrapped very tightly, or is that a 50-pound, 60-pound alfalfa? You know, that's, and Emily knew right away what hers was per ton, which is the important. That did my heart good, Emily.
Oh, okay. Well, I am a numbers person, Louise.
Great. Well, my clock says that we are at the top of the hour, so I want to thank all of our presenters, and by all means, reach out. You can reach Emily at eStearns, STARNS, at horsecouncil.org. You can get Ashley at UHC, which is short for United Horse Coalition, at horsecouncil.org. And you can always find me. I'm Jay Broadway at horsecouncil.org. And we'd be happy to help you, direct you to someone who has the knowledge to answer your questions if we can't answer them ourselves. So thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your day. And we hope you have a rest of the day. Your President's Day goes better than our little rats did on our technology today.
Hamsters. They're
The
hamsters.
hamsters, not the rats, the hamsters.
Mine turned out to be a cat, if that makes a difference.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.